Yeah, it's really nice to see everybody here. And I think I'm just going to keep my part really short uh, so that, the main speakers for today, Sanjay Mohe and Medappa, get as much time as possible. Uh, before we begin, I would like to just start by thanking BIC for agreeing to let us do this here. Extremely nice of them to say yes. So special thanks to Ravichandran, to Vikram, to Sandhya, and to everybody at BIC who's made this evening possible for us. Also, the idea for this event really has been this. The starting point for the event has been this book, and it was a book that was commissioned by the institute. We have the director of IIMB here, Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, and we also have Professor Kumar and K.R. Rusha, who were part of the IIMB history project, which commissioned the book. So thanks to all of them for initiating this. It was a project that started 3 years ago, and then the pandemic came, and things were on hold for a bit, but then they continued. And I I would just like to say that this evening what we're going to do is I'll just share a little bit about the book, not too much. After that, what Bejoy said he'd like to do is show a clip from a film, which will be about 8.5 minutes or so. And then we'll move over with Sanjay Mohe and Medappa sharing a few of the projects that they have done on the IIM campus, not all, they said, because of the shortage of time. And then it will be followed by a brief dialogue between the speakers on creative collaboration. And I'd like to just share that the reason why we wanted to focus on creative collaboration is because this campus, unlike, it's very exceptional for a number of reasons. And I think those of us here who are architects know, the reasons why it is so special because of the integration of the built and the unbuilt spaces, the way in which nature is allowed to come in, the way in which the light comes in so beautifully. So in addition to that, I think over the 40 years that the campus has been in existence, and the architects who have come in, Balkrishna, Doshi, Achyut, Kanvinde, and Mindspace architects, and I think also briefly CNT architects, and Mr. Prem Chandavarkar is right here. I think the transition from one architect to another architect, and from the different projects that they did, it has been fairly seamless. And today, when you walk through the campus, you really can't tell that this is a place that has been done by different architects and during different time periods. So I think in that sense, it is also quite special. As I said, in addition to all the other good things that Doshi had brought in his design vision. Now, I think I'll just, so this is basically what we have in the book. And there are, so I'd like to just a little bit touch upon what the book does, what it does not do. Typically, what architecture books do is, there are a lot of architectural drawings. One is always looking to see what was it that went into the design process, how was the design developed, and so on. This book, especially because it was being commissioned by the clients themselves, since the institute was initiating this, we thought it would be great to take this opportunity to talk to people who have lived on this campus, who've worked here, and for whom the campus has meant quite a lot, So apart from the architectural experiences that it gives you, the way in which nature has come in over the 4 decades has allowed many of the spaces on the campus to have a very, very special quality. and there are memories embedded in these spaces. So I think what we wanted to do was capture the stories of the people who are part of the institute, who have come in here either as faculty, as staff, as students. So that's what the book tries to do. Um, and um, you know, I think just this one quote from Doshi about the garden city must have a garden campus, a green campus, but he asked this question: will it be a campus or will it be an ashram? And I think most of us here, who have either seen Doshi's work or have had some interaction with him, either as his students or trainees or in any other way that people interacted with Doshi, we know that there was, apart from being the designer that he was, he brought in this, this quality of that something sacred and something spiritual into his work. And in fact, in the later works, it even increased. So I think that that design vision that was set in place became sort of the foundation for what was to come later. The book, very briefly, in one of the chapters, touches upon the design approach of the three architects. So, from 77 to 92, the work of Balkrishna Doshi, and then, Achyut Kanvinde, who many of you must know already. He did the residential part of the campus. Um, and of course, the work of Mindspace Architects. Now, to talk a little bit about what the focus of the book was, it has been, as I said, to bring out the memories that people hold of the spaces, and through the photographs and the interview excerpts, as I said earlier, what also comes out is how over time nature has played a role in the making of this campus. So, just to add here, we always like to sort of recall what Jan Gehl says, the Danish architect and urban designer, in his book Life Between Buildings. He tells us that as people move about in the spaces between buildings, there is an entire spectrum of necessary and optional activities that come about. And for architects and urban designers shaping these spaces, an understanding of the patterns of movement and activities and the needs and perceptions of users becomes really very important. And I think more and more architecture schools are also talking about this. Just to quote a little bit from one of the interviews that we've included in the book. So when students come into IIM Bangalore, they have heard about L Square. And many of us who come as architects into the campus to look at the campus probably don't know the L Square. This is a courtyard within the hostel blocks. And in an interview with Vishwang Bhaskar, he shared that all the student festivals, Vista, Eximus, Unmad, will definitely have a few events that happen at L Square. Birthday bashes happen at L Square. And so he says that it does mean a lot to us. It is not the place that has connection for us. It is the things that happen in the place. And I think, again, I'm sort of reiterating this. As architects, we need to remind ourselves that the people who come in there after the project is built, what do they have to say about the architectural project? What do they have to say about the place? Also, the students find that there are joys of discovery embedded within the interweaving built-unbuilt spaces, which are not so visible when they first arrive. However, as time passes, they begin to see, to know the range of experiences and encounters that the architecture here makes possible. And here, I'd like to share what Akruti Furia, who was also, like Vishwang, of the PGP 2021-23 batch, she says that it took her a while to figure out the maze that was the old hostel blocks and the new blocks. So she says, initially, I remember I used to plan for a half-hour margin to get to the KT sessions. KT sessions are the knowledge transfer sessions This is something we learned while interviewing her. And she said that she needed that half-hour margin from her own hostel room to one of the other hostel rooms. She said, I would factor getting lost. Of course, it was only for the first week that I was on campus. After that, I did figure it out. So some of these things have been very interesting to know. And then the second part, which we thought that this book could bring out a little bit, is how nature foregrounds architecture. Wherever you walk on campus, now it's not possible anymore to see the buildings by themselves. You always see them through the leaves, through the through the sunflowers, and through the tabebua. So it's just absolutely beautiful. This is the L cluster, one of the older classroom blocks. This is the what we like to call the tabebua courtyard, or Prabhakar's courtyard. This is where a lot of the faculty students hang out for coffee. And here, it would be nice to just go through what Professor Devi Vijay, who is a PhD alumnus from IIM Bangalore, and she's currently a faculty at IIM Calcutta, comes back sometimes to IIM Bangalore to teach a course. She says that the L cluster is beautiful because of the bougainvillea vine next to it. Those few minutes before my class, when I have some coffee, just before going in, it's those bougainvillea that work for me. It's a simultaneous mix of something being beautiful right now, but also those memories of the bougainvillea back then when I was studying here, beautiful in the same way over time. I think all of that shapes one's experience, lived experience. So I think this is a reminder for us that, while I'm again saying this, that as architects, we tend to not realize that, nature is so very important to most of the people. And then just coming to what is going to be the focus for today. While the design, I mean, we've said this before, there is a seamless connect. So what we're going to do is also just discuss maybe two key questions for today. How does an architect create an adaptable design vision that allows others to add their own elements without disrupting the original vision? Here, the original vision that Doshi had set in place seems to have made it possible for plugins to happen. And the second question is, and these here you can see the old hostel blocks on the left done by Balkrishna Doshi, and the new hostel blocks done by Mindspace Architects. Another view, and again, the old and the new sitting side by side. Apart from the color of the stone, it really does look very, very much part of the same architectural vocabulary, both, in terms of the material vocabulary as well as the aesthetic vocabulary. And here you have the pergola corridor on the left side, the N classroom block, which came up just 4 to 5 years ago. And so what I'm going to stop with this. What is the design mindset that we need to have? How should we also learn to develop a capability to adapt, to expand from what has already been done, to take an existing design vocabulary forward? So I'll stop with this, and I think perhaps Bejoy can come forward.
So our next speaker is Bejoy Ramachandran, who founded 100 Hands, and which is a widely recognized architectural practice in 2003. I mean, it's recognized even now, but he founded it in 2003 with his partner, Sunita Kondur. He currently serves on the Faculty of Architecture at the British School at Rome and is design chair for the postgraduate program at BMS College of Architecture in Bengaluru. We at BIC have a personal fondness for Bejoy because he, along with 100 Hands, actually designed the building that we're in today. So he wants me to play this film, so I'm just going to play it and then, great. So over to Bejoy.
Um, Thank you, Kiran. Thanks to the BIC for inviting me to be part of the panel. It's an honor to be on a panel with Mohe sir and Medappa. Of course, the competition of the BIC, the Mohe sir was on the jury, and so some gratitude. Thank you for this opportunity to have had this. But just a few words about IIM and about these two films that we made. IIM is very, very close to my heart. I mean, I would like to think that almost everything that we continue to do is inspired by all of the time that we've spent there in that building, and it's like going back to an old friend when you're in doubt or in turmoil, and then somehow the answers come. You figure out how to do the staircase or the railing, or just larger questions about how one should live with generosity and a certain temperance. Also on a sort of personal aside, Suni will hate me for saying this, but we had our first official date at IIM, and so it's very, very special building for me. My brother and I, in 2009, 2008 actually, had an idea to make a film on Doshi, primarily with this sort of knowledge of IIM, but also I worked briefly at Doshi's office. And my brother, who'd just come back from the UK, was not doing anything. And so I said, do you mind we spend a few weeks in Ahmedabad to spend some more time with Doshi? And a few weeks got to be more than a year. And so we made the first film. My brother did everything. I was just sort of with him, enjoying time with Doshi, asking him questions that were troubling me as a practitioner. And Doshi sort of veering off into all of the philosophical underpinnings that, formed his basis of understanding. A really sort of incredibly profound time with him. And so having done one film, we said, why not do it again? And so in 2019, we did another film thanks to Ruturaj Parikh and Takshila, and we screened it at Frame. So I've got a clip here, which is from the first film. It's a clip on IIM Bangalore, and I thought it would be pertinent to play it today. So thanks, Kiran, and thanks to the BIC.
You see, Corbusier told me once, which I think is important, that remember there is somebody standing behind you who is better than you, and you are answerable to him.
The little I know about Doshi's past, inside that man is a sensibility that combines heroism with modesty. You can't help feeling that he truly cares. He has a deep sensibility for the people that might live or work or occupy a building. He's thinking about the humanity of the problem rather than the grandeur of his own ego.
So Ramaswamy says, I'm interested in small scale people. So I want this made, for a small scale, and therefore the buildings have to be such that everybody feels at home and not really awed by buildings. I said, I will make this place gardens. And I told Ramaswamy that we should have buildings. In fact, the board I met, I said, I will only make 3-storied building so that they are in stone and eventually they will disappear. So one of them says, but when they disappear, which means there will be no architecture. I said, more or less not architecture, but you will experience what you experience in Madurai temple. Then they kept quiet. See, reference helps that time. Because they cannot say Madurai temple is not good. So even as an architect, you have to be very quick, in answering them. In Bangalore, you won't find forest like this anymore.
Oh, yes.
It's gone, huh? I made the drawing, and I forget the name of the then a very nice person who was their administrative officer. And I made a drawing, and now you have to approve the budget. So pergola is between the two buildings, and there is only column structure. So basically it is an empty corridor. So I calculated all the areas, and then I got the budget approved, but the plan showed the pergola. So when the building started working, the man says, I should remember his name because he was the one. He says, why are you worried? It is approved in the plan, no? So you show is approved in the plan and go ahead. So it happened.
If you look at Mises' work or Korb's work or Alto's early work, actually their training is neoclassical, and it's all about composition, the creation of compositional space. And I know, Doshi is obviously much younger than them, but you can't help feeling that his training gave him an understanding of the nature of composition, but also the benefit of history, so that you feel that his work is reaching back into our sensibility, not only about how things combine to where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but also recalling space and material and simplicity that takes us back into eras before modernism. So we connect with things that are sort of timeless, and they have a gravitas and significance that is much greater than us as simple individuals today.
Actually, if you really go back to your childhood and think about the childhood and say that this is how I enjoyed my life, and I was always wanting to be outside with my friends. And then this Kannadi was talking that I don't remember my college days, I remember my school days. The reason is there are no places given at a higher education like the child would use.
Last thing I would say, in my consciousness about our visit to the Management Institute, was the breathtaking simplicity with which everything was achieved. That I sort of call it architecture without adjectives. So our visit was humbling to come across this building that did everything that we could ever want to do in building ourselves, and yet here it had been done decades before and we hadn't really experienced it.
I am not an architect, that's the problem. For me, it's a search. It's only search. Search for that unknown which I have not known. Neither I know how it will manifest. That's actually the essence of my work. It begins somewhere, ends somewhere, and in that process I grow and the work grows. And we both grow together. I was supposed to go and teach in Colombo. Examiner for Colombo. And I tell my wife, let's go to Colombo. Now, we land in Madras. That Srivatsav is staying there, so we stay with him. And I said, I want to go to Colombo. How do I go? He said, but do you have a visa? I said, no. He said, do you need to have visa? He says, of course. I said, what do I do now? And about a week was there, only 4 or 5 days. So I went to the embassy there and they said, no, you can't. You have to get to Delhi and all that. So after 3 days, they say, you can't get it. Then I tell him that why don't I go to Madurai, another place. So my wife and myself made 2 weeks of trip. In between, so many calls came from Sri Lanka, Colombo to here and back and forth. And they did not know where we were. And that was the time, was the best period. I saw Madurai temple and other things there and Tanjore and others, because then I found proportions, rhythm, light and same structure but with variations. And you see these long corridors and these columns going up and courtyards. And one discovers this, but you are also observing. I am observing people there, and some people are sad, some are happy, some people transform themselves, and you see people rolling. So ritual is another fascination that I have been having from childhood. Mahabharata, Ramayana. See, these are all a useful things because when you go back and you see these images, you ask questions why the images are there, why it is like this, why the corridors shift like but expansion. So that uncertainty I discovered here, that incremental growth. So all these things came from these understandings of Indian life.
Thank you, Bejoy. Our next speaker is Sanjay Mohe, and he is the founder of Bengaluru-based Mindspace, and he's had a working association of 21 years with Bengaluru's famous C&T Associates, a prodigy of India's first architectural institute, Sir J.J. College of Architecture, Mumbai. His work straddles a spectrum of projects, and he's a well-known face adorning a lot of architectural forums and talks. He has many awards to his credit, including the J.K. Cement Great Master Awardee in 2019, the Golden Architect Award by A&D and Spectrum Foundation, and the Architecture Award in 2009, to name a few. I'd like to invite Mr. Mohe up.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kiran, for calling, and thanks, Doshi, for being here. In last 20 years experience with IIM, met so many directors. You're one of the recent ones. So it has been a long journey. And after watching this great presence, you feel more humbled. And I'm feeling more scared now because the work will be more compared. You should have shown this film at the end of the thing, not now. So, but anyway, so that's the campus all of us know about. Now, we have been visiting this for a long time. First, I think we went there in '84 or something. There was absolutely nothing around. We, from CNT, Mr. Nair was a contractor. He booked a bus for all of us. And we went there, and it was out in the wilderness. There was nothing, no traffic, nothing. But what I admire is this amazing thing about, leaving that green space right in front, and that buffer of almost like 50 meters, which now you know the importance of it because the kind of traffic and noise outside, but you just don't get affected by it. And then this large presence of a green right in the middle, which is like the soul of the whole campus. And that really makes a difference. And this is what even the film, Doshi, is always walking through this. And the way the landscape happens here, the kind of wilderness, it's not manicured landscape, just happens and you feel at ease as you come and discover the spaces. So this is what we saw. That time we were part of the base group. Prem also knows about it. He was also part of that. And we used to keep visiting places, and those days we were younger and probably the security was not so strong like now. So they used to allow us to walk in. And sometimes in the middle of the night we have visited these places, and you've seen some drama rehearsal going on there. So we learned everything here. This was like what Bejoy said. This was like an encyclopedia of learning for us. Whenever we had a drought, we would come here. This building gave us a lot of confidence, to build something big, to think about large spaces, how to use local material. It's all gray and just literally one material, right? The walls are gray, the floor is gray stone. And sometimes you wonder when you see this Ajanta, Ellora, all those great craftsmen who worked that time, if they had to build something today, probably they would have built IIM. So that's something which has some wonderful quality and the light. Actually, we were with Peter Rich the other day on the campus, and he said this building is more about the darkness. And you begin to understand that importance of not just the light, but the darkness as well. And of course, this is one of the, actually, Arun met Shivkumar just last week, and he could manage to pull out some of these old shots. So just to see how the space has changed over the years. And to me, I think this is one of the most gracefully aged building. I can't think of any other building which has aged so gracefully, and the way the greenery has taken over. Again, when Arun met Shivkumar, he found some of these pictures, and it seems Doshi shared this with the management. I'm not very sure about it, but probably before he started designing IIM Bangalore. And I'll probably share it on a larger thing later, but the way it is all written, he talks so much about Khan. And he doesn't talk about himself. He just says Khan did that, Khan did this, and he had such, he wanted to create that light and shade and wanted to use that brick and bring in that modernity as well. So I think it's so important to sort of bring the client to that level where you can communicate and express your ideas, and not to talk about himself, but talk about his guru, a mentor. And then that was something wonderful. This is one of the first plans, and this talks about the phasing. And this is something which we witnessed during those mid-80s, early 90s maybe. What you see, the gray one is the first phase. And that's where we used to visit, and that pergola there. And that looked like a huge space during that time. And that time, Doshi used to come and meet us very often, almost like every second month. And then he was talking about this making of this large pergola, which is about 200 meters long. And in the base group, we used to sit with her and think about what that 200 meters must be. And finally, we saw it coming up. But one of the best part was, as the phases happened, at no point it looked incomplete. At every point, it looked complete, and it started absorbing different things. So these were some of the pictures under construction. So this is what it all revolves around, this yellow path. And then the activities sort of get anchored around this movement. And that is something which is always a reference point for all of us. And it sort of gives you a point of reference all the time. And these are some of the buildings which we started working on later, whatever it's in that light yellow color. So, these are the things which, whatever these names written there, those are things we worked on. This was one of the first building. And that time we were we were on CNT, and I don't know how I got to work on IIM, but it was a scary thing. It wasn't easy because first of all, to work next to master, and you would have realized after watching that movie that how scary it must have been. So the attempt was to keep it as low-key as possible, almost try to make as non-building as possible. So it was kind of a difficult task how to start, because it's an extremely structured building. And I was more comfortable working with Korea's kind of work, which is not so structured in a sense. In IIM, when you look up, almost every beam is worked out literally. That it's such a perfect structure. So this is what was the first, and there is a date also here, the 2000, and then we made this model. But luckily, what happened was this was slightly detached from the NSR Center, which was a kind of a detached building. Didn't have to be absolutely connected with that. So and then I showed it to Doshi. That time we were sitting in one of the dhabas and showing it to him, and he told that, "Oh, wow, why do you worry?" I said, "I'm really scared to do anything there." So that time he said, "Why do you worry? You put a shimmering glass, let it reflect, do whatever you want to." Typical Doshi. So but that made it even more difficult. Uh, if he would have told use stone, use concrete, it would have been easier. So these were the plans, and then the whole idea was to sort of give a respect towards the master's work and reflect that these are the north lights, and try to bury the building as much as possible, make it as non-building as possible. So this was the first one, but when we were asked to do the next one, actually this was a kind of approach. It's almost like it's a very shy kind of approach where almost like a dulhan, you're trying to put a gungat and then try to sort of shy away from the thing, because it was very difficult to find the language. How do you really intervene into this great masterpiece? So this was one of the safest way of doing it. But eventually we had to start doing some extensions to the MDC building, and also we had to really start using the similar language. And then when you start working with the clients, with these different committees and approval process and costing and all, slowly architecture goes into the background, because you are fighting every day against getting approvals, stopping changes happening and cost and all. And then suddenly you have to shake yourself and, oh, Doshi is watching you. And then, so these kind of things, kept on happening over the years. So these were some of the interventions, what we did. The next one is the classroom complex. I mean, this was probably one of the most difficult projects to work on, because earlier what we were doing were slightly away from the main campus. Medappa was working on some of the hostels which were slightly disconnected. But to do something this was an incomplete building, which the basement was done, and we were asked to build classrooms, 8 classrooms, because the intake had increased and they wanted the classrooms to be about 100 to 120 people each. So this was a difficult task. So there were 2 strong references. That great pergola, what I was talking about, 200 meters long, which is a main kind of a sole anchor point. And then there are a set of trees which were behind, and we were trying to respond to those 2 accesses. This is the front. That's Mr. Hegde, who worked with the engineer who worked with Mr. Doshi earlier. So we happened to sort of work with him as well. These were some of the columns. The mild steel was used about 25 years back, and we had to actually drill some of the columns through this with the basement below. And the classrooms used to work around, so any noise, they used to stop the work. So it was a tough thing, not only for architects, but even for the contractor. This was a situation on the rear side, thick growth of trees. And then there was an access here. So we created this large set of steps going up. So this is, now you see steps through that opening. So that's the access which happened, and you have these classrooms happening different levels with the greenery on the other side. Some initial sketches. This pergola is such a powerful element, bringing some amazing light, ever-changing. And what we were doing was, after 25 years, almost 30 years after that. So we said that this has to show, we tried to complement as much as possible, but somewhere it has to show that it is done later. So we added these glass cubes so that, eventually it became perforated, perforated metal sheets. But there are a lot of cubes which keep coming from the wall, from the floor, from the roof. And that's the junction that you see between the old and that expansion joint. Because of the loading, we had to use a lot of exposed concrete, and also this is how it sort of looked like, the western light which comes in connection with the greenery outside. So this is what it was, and this is what it became later. So just quickly want to compare. I was talking about these 2 different edges. One is that pergola, which is a very, very dynamic, very, very powerful form. And then there is this greenery which sort of makes you relax. And this is exactly same thing happens in JNC. This is Korea's work. And both the buildings happened more or less at the same time. Maybe this is about 5 years later on a smaller scale. But we happened to work on both extension to both this Korea's as well as Doshi's building, which was again very difficult task. But what I'm trying to compare is this whole path is again exactly 200 meters, and which is a nice thing to compare. So you have this, kind of whole drama which is happening, unfolding through this, and then there is a path which goes through this greenery, and then both complement each other, and you always begin to feel, which I noticed it in Jahangir Art Gallery also. You go through these great gallery spaces, but there was this Samuar Cafe. That's where you go and start, including people like M.F. Hussain and all. They'll start sketching on those Formica, tables, and that's where you relax. That's where the actual creativity comes out from, and then that's that connection between this, which is not so well maintained, but this is the greenery, and something similar started happening here. You have this path and then the edge. So this is the pergola edge and this is the rear edge, and you'll always find this happened accidentally. It was, and then there is a dining hall which happened later. So there's a lot of energy you find here. A lot of people always hanging around. This was just taken on Saturday. This picture Kiran showed, but I always love this because you begin to feel this is designed by us, but the nature has started accepting us. This is a dining block, and both Bejoy and Kiran were insistent that we should show this. It's a very small intervention which happens into this area. And this is how it looked like, because this is the dining hall which was done by Doshi earlier, and then on the left, this was called night canteen, and then between the two, they had put some temporary roof kind of a thing. And this was under discussion for a very, very long time. This typically happened with most of the projects in IIM. The gestation period is almost like minimum 4 to 5 years. So this is something which, there's the space between this night canteen and kitchen and, the existing kitchen. And one of the first, this was done by Chalaya from our office, and we added some extension and added some roofs on the top. So this got revived later, and then we had to do that quickly. It had to be finished during the vacation time, and also there was a lot of pressure. So Arun and Dhanush did some amazing drawings in last few days after Kiran asked us to present this. So I'm quickly going to show all these drawings. So the way that intervention happens, that the larger canteen and the smaller one, and then the space between which connected with skylight. So what you see in the middle is what, and then we added the mezzanine. There's a level difference, so you can access easily from here. People come from the other side also. So it's like an open pavilion kind of a thing. So it opens out on both the sides, light coming in. And this is how it looks like when you come up, looking back at the classroom complex. So this had a sloped roof, that night canteen. So it just gave that form. This is all Arun's work. And then looking there and sitting, looking back. And then we had a chance to this had some lovely memories, because we keep meeting gods when you work on these kind of projects, and also because of Bejoy. So that's the other side when you enter. So that's the new intervention. So there was an insistence for a long time to enclose this, and we were saying, please don't do that and all. But there was a lot of pressure, so we made all the drawings. We said we will make all the drawings to give different options of closing this. But we said you just hold it for 6 months. If people really don't like it, then you close it. So we kept the drawings ready. So IIM had a confidence that it can be closed. But after it was all done, I think everyone likes it open. So eventually that thing didn't happen, thankfully. This is okay. This is the sports complex. I'm just showing quickly to show how it was when we started, just planted the trees, and how it looks now. So these pictures were taken about a month back. So you make a place for nature, and it sort of begins to take over. You don't have to do too much about it. Same thing here. This was when it was just completed, and then this was a month back. I mean, the way these trees take off is amazing within 5 years. Same space again, and how it has become. So that just to talk about nature and how important it is in IIM. This is the last project, the hostel block, which got completed about a year back. We're talking about this space. Actually, the way it started was, again, there was a lot of the initial thing. The scheme started almost probably some 6-7 years back. And that time, there was so much pressure that the institute told us that it has to be high-rise building because the land is very scarce, and all IITs, IIMs, everyone is going for high-rise buildings, and you cannot have it as ground plus 2, ground plus 3, etc. So we had to sort of find a place. Now, just outside this road, there are a lot of taller structures. So we finally said that if you bring it somewhere here, which is anyway as an extension of the hostel block, if you put it here, at least it will get merged into the outside. So the critics who would come, they'll say, oh, this belongs to outside, you don't have to. Because especially in IIM, whatever you do, you have to know that you have to face all these things. But with all that, we did this structure. This is how it looked like. All exposed concrete with a lot of detailing had gone into it. But thankfully, even the foundation stone was laid and all. But then for some good reason, it stopped. And then we got a chance to rework on it, which was ground plus, all the hostels are ground plus 2. This is ground plus 4. So it's slightly higher than others, but so this is how, keeping some of the larger trees, we sort of worked it around that. Now, from this existing pergola, the continuation happens and comes to the entry point. There was a drop of about 4 meters, so you get a basement there. The different sections. So these drawings were all done during last week. And so thanks to Kiran. So unless somebody tells you that you have to present something, we don't do the drawings. So Arun, Dhanush, and all office, they came out with such beautiful sections. So this is how the various sections work with the basement. This goes down to the sports complex. The section lines are given here. This is through the pergola, which is the extension of a dining in the middle. The middle court, the first court. These are the shorter sections and the plans. So at this point, when the whole scheme was done, Mr. Doshi visited IIM and we got a chance to present it to him. And that time his suggestion was, can you scale it down and do something? And then we really jumped at that and added that stone wall in front. So thanks to Doshi, we got this thing which kind of scaled it down. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to get it through. So this is something that this is wrapping around, and then you enter through that space, the entry part. These are the various entrances into the courtyard. This is the dining hall. There are a lot of questions people ask. Why do you use aluminum pergola instead of, that kind of timeless kind of that what Doshi's RCC. But this is only to show the time, I think, that it is done later. Anyway, looking at the design, you'll know that it is done later, but still. So that's again, I think Kiran showed some similar shot. This is the old and the new. Some of the, we got a very good quality of concrete in this. And all Arun's amazing detailing. And that's the basement. Actually, I love this basement because you have these trees coming through and the light quality and all is nice inside. So these are the people who worked on at various times. And so literally almost entire Mindspace sometime or other worked on one of the IIM projects. So thank you very much. I think that's this last one. Thanks.
So our final speaker for the day is P.N. Medappa, who graduated from Malnad College of Engineering and has 35 years of experience. He joined CNT Associates, where he worked for about 11 years and was inducted as a partner to the prestigious firm Mindspace in 2008. He believes in human-centric, climate-responsive, and sustainable design. Over to Mr. Medappa.
Thanks, Kiran, actually, because of this, we are going back in memory lane to see what we had done earlier. So I have worked on few of the projects, so I'll briefly show two of them. Two projects. So what I have worked on were mainly housing for the faculty and hostel for the students. Like Mohe said, I didn't do anything touching the earlier structure, so I was a little safer compared to what Mohe did. And Mohe also mentioned that he was scared, and you can imagine how scared I must have been working on these projects. So the first project is housing for the married students. This was in year 2000 when we were part of CNT. So the location of this was, earlier we had looked at the committee had suggested some other locations like this kind of a location, but finally we came to this, which was next to the playground, surrounded by, there was a buffer of trees between the playground and this. The orientation was north and south, and there was a tree plantation onto one side. And again, almost all sites, it was covered with this tree plantation. Yeah, so that is the orientation. And then we were approaching it from this side. The famous water tank of the Three Idiots is somewhere here. And so what the committee wanted at that time was that the management wanted was that they wanted they wanted to go vertical at that time, even in housing, that they wanted at least 3 floors, like the apartments which they saw outside the campus. And they said you build 3 floors with a basement parking below. So what we looked at that time is, instead of building single floors, we wanted to make it interesting by adding these kind of houses which sat on a lesser footprint, but it was like interlocking units which were one above the other. The lower unit actually had the access of the court with the greenery, and the upper unit gets the access to the sky with the terraces and all that, with the parking in the front area. So it was, so we created this connecting courtyards which were in front of the houses, which ended in the view of the teak plantation beyond. And all these houses faced there was a shift of axis which happened all inside the spaces. So it was almost like this structured grid with a vertical connection happening in between the units. There were these court spaces, gardens behind the unit, and the front became the community zone. This was almost like a community for these within the campus. There was a smaller community formed with these units with this development. It was the served and the service grids with the lower unit having it was all these small kitchen and then toilet grids happening here, and the living and the small one half bed happening along this. Under the main staircase, there was one powder room added below. So it was all very structured kind of a unit. So the lower unit accessed the court behind, and the upper unit accessed the terrace, with the light coming into the upper unit with a skylight at the upper level. Within the units, there was a flow of the spaces flow with each other with this interlocking volumes, with a half bed happening at the upper level, and it was like an open planning which was happening. So the whole house was connected. These were very tiny units which we had done. Across the court, there were some of these common rooms were taken across, with some at some higher levels the bedrooms would go across here, scaling down this whole space in between. So this was a spine which went across where when you entered, you didn't see the entire volume, but it kept changing volumes in between. So in terms of the language, we took the concrete and the stone we brought in, with a little bit of the white painted surfaces from the existing campus. The rear side, we had this one wall which went as a sweeping wall, which became the backdrop for the courtyards which were created at the back. So these are the recent pictures where the greenery has taken over. The next project is a hostel project. We did this hostel in 2 phases. The first one is we were asked to do a 160 room hostel block. The earlier hostel block was here, and if we had repeated the same block, then it would have spread quite a lot beyond. And the requirement was for the number was more, and there was a demand, and from the management there was a demand that we should have higher density and then go for doubly loaded corridors and all that. So we started with that. So we took this hostel around the playground. This becomes a north-south axis. There is a connection from the old hostel through that. And we were looking at building it as the first phase as around, almost like a gallery around the playground. And the second phase as a next layer beyond with there were some large trees here. Beyond that, this was looked at as a second phase. So this hostel was designed as a cluster of 8 units with each having these balconies and a core with toilets and the staircase happening in between. And these also became these wind tunnels, creating ventilation shafts in between. In section, we pulled out the upper rooms beyond with a light coming into the lower corridors through these skylights. So this became almost like a gallery where there were connections from the ground side also. In this case, we repeated with the concrete walls, stone, and some layer of white walls behind. The concrete were taken as panels at the upper levels also. The second phase of the hostel, we added as a layer behind. This time the number increased and they wanted about 300 rooms to be added. So the curve continued. The second curve happened. By that time, all these trees had grown in the front. So we had to tackle with a lot of these trees in between. So the plan got changed when we actually planted and then looked at, there were some large trees in between, coming in between. So we had to change the pattern. There were, from the first phase to the second phase, there were we created these bridge connections across. So the in-between space filled with trees became that celebration space, which became a space where the activities could spill over from the rooms to these areas. And since we could not accommodate all this 300 here, it had to spread across to the front and then skirt around the ground also. In terms of section, we had already created one link from the playground coming down. And the lower level of this second phase was looked at as a dining, but which finally did not get used, but it is being used for the common activities. So a typical cluster in this case was with 10 to 12 rooms with a course happening in between. That connection from the ground, which would get connected to that space in between. So the last block which came to the front had to have similar language as the front which we had built in the first phase. That in-between space which we had, we were looking at, we were expecting a lot of activities to happen where the students could use in a different occasions. So we found some of these activities happening where I think this is during one of these yearly events, all the students would get here and start preparing the event here. These bridges were under these, the trees which were there, which we had preserved. The connecting bridges would go across, and so many activities would happen here. In this case, we had a little bit, we could use a little bit of stone, but it was mostly the concrete and the and a little bit of white walls. And we added these panels as barriers to hide the laundry behind. We also did some faculty housing, some 10 houses. I think I'll stop here because I'm getting into that. Yeah, okay. So there is one more we did. There were 24 residences we were asked to design. So this was next to what Kanvinde's office had done earlier. So in this case, when we started doing, they said no stone, no concrete, because the time, I think it was because of the timeline, and also because I think they said that they were bored of the gray. So they wanted some color at that time. So so this was a sloping site with some existing trees which we had to protect, and they were looking at sustainability and conserving water and all that. So it was like what we had designed is they wanted again apartments. So what was designed was it was like apartments, but again this design was very similar to the married housing on a scaled up volumes. So these were again these interlocking volumes with the lower unit getting the ground and the upper unit connecting to the sky again. We brought in this case, we brought in the light to even to the lower unit. So the lower unit was this and the upper unit was this. I won't get into the planning part of it. So these were the faculty, the interiors were done by themselves, as it is now at present. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks to both Mohe and Medappa for these, for sharing all of this. We have never had a chance, I've never had a chance to see this before, so it's been very, very nice, and thanks for the drawings. I think I'd like to start this dialogue with this one thing, Sanjay, which you said about while trying very much in the N classroom block to match what was already there, you still decided to add the glass discussion rooms there as a way of saying that this is from a different time. And while, frankly, I've never really personally liked the glass coming in there, always thinking that, why is the glass there? Was the glass really necessary? I think today when you put it across like that, it sort of reminded me of how particularly in American university campuses, where, the campus is 150 years old and you're looking at something, a building which came up in the initial years 150 years ago, and then something came up 70 years ago, and then something came up more recently. So if we were to, for example, start looking at the IIM campus as, maybe being 100 years old one day, The architects who would come in at that point would probably find it a little bit easier to plug into something which is now stone plus concrete plus glass, rather than having to then make that connect with only stone. So maybe that, looking at it from the point of what might happen, many, many decades ahead of us, maybe in that sense it is useful. But also from having talked to students, I have heard them say that those discussion rooms are one of their favorite parts of the campus.
Thank God.
Yeah, they are.
I was waiting for what is coming.
No, they are. They totally love the fact that they can sit there, talk to each other in this space, which is, almost soundproof, and they are still able to see the pergola below. So yes, they love it. Just want to start by asking about what is, really seems like, both to Bejoy and me, seems a fantastic piece of work, which is the extension to the canteen. While you showed us the drawings, and that really helped to understand the night canteen and the part that you sandwiched between the student canteen and the night canteen, the day canteen and the night canteen. But what were the problems on the ground, even as the drawings were being done and perhaps after the drawings were done? What kind of issues did you face?
Well, it's, can hear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It started with the way the existing dining was, and it wasn't sufficient. So a lot of ad hoc extension happened over the years. One of the things which we felt with so much regard, with so much regard for Doshi's work, I personally didn't like that canteen so much because it was extremely introvert kind of a space. So every time I went there for lunch and all, I felt that it should open out somehow. So when this chance came to sort of extend it, the kitchen had to be extended. We looked at it like an open pavilion because you have trees on both the sides. We had advantage of levels. There were existing trees on both the sides, and taking the structural constraints, because both had this, the column structure was on either edge. We couldn't load it, so there were few of the structural problems, but to merge everything, we have this amazing engineer, Ram Kumar, working with us, and he knows how to solve every structural problem. So he came out with this idea of not connecting it with the existing building, but still managed to keep it like an open pavilion. So I think it just fell into the place. Actually, the difficult part was the detailing of that sloped roof over the night canteen and all. But what really was a challenge turned out to be, kind of a nice feature to be in. So it just fell into the place.
Yeah, and also I just want to add here, those of you who have visited the campus but have just walked around the canteen, you really must climb up. I mean, in spite of the drawings and the photographs, I think the experience of that extension is really very special. You really need to walk through that space, and as Mohe explained, the wraparound of the trees on both ends. And the views that you get from the top, and this night canteen that you talked about, which was not the sloped roof was not an exciting structure at all. But right now, the way you experience it, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's all Arun's work. I don't know where he's sitting. But what this structure did is it energized the space behind because of opening that. The rear side of the classroom, that has become quite active because all the students kind of walk through that and they sit on those benches.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite parts of the campus as well. And when Zunthor was here, we had pakoda and chai up there, and it was the best place to sit. When we were at Doshi's office, as you enter the office, there used to be a huge model of the IIM thing in wood. I don't know if you remember that. There's a massive campus-wide model. And Purushottam Bhai, who was the model maker, we would ask him to tell us about IIM stories. So, he would point out to certain parts of the building and he would whisper in our ear and say, "Ye hum nahi banaya hai." That he would look at this elevation and he say, "Ye pura elevation modular hai." And then he will give you the dimensions from plinth to lintel to sill to lintel to terrace, everything modular, plan, section, etc., etc. So I had a question for both of you, especially with the buildings that you abutted to Doshi's building. When you design, sir, when both of you make your buildings, how important are these cadences of structure? Because in fact, we had a wonderful trainee who made those drawings that I shared with you. He sat and decoded the old part of IIM completely in terms of modular dimensions and golden sections and squares. It's a building that exists both in terms of its larger ideas of frameworks and generosity and all of that. It exists as a grid, as a thing that you can measure and learn about dimensioning and these proportioning systems. And it exists also in terms of its details, its windows, its railings. I mean, it's something that gives you a lesson at an abstract level, but also at the level of everything that you touch and feel. So in terms of the buildings that you've done as attachment, how important are these kinds of proportioning systems? Or are there dimensions that you use as part of your go-to dimensions in terms of scale, proportion?
That's what I was telling. It's all scary because I didn't know about all these things.
We don't know what to do with that information, but
but we still managed to fit in whatever we could. No, I mean, frankly speaking, I mean, we all read about it, but really didn't go into that so much detail of trying to understand those proportions and modularity. But what we were trying to do is kind of fitting in that jigsaw puzzle where there were a lot of things which were incomplete, and our role was not to shout actually, because you could easily get carried away. And so the difficult part was to be as low-key as possible and try to do something which would merge into the campus. So, but at the same time, you want to show that it is done today, so you would probably change some railing details or few things like that. But overall, you would try to sort of keep the geometry same, the material palette same. Later on, it became a little difficult to use stone because there were issues about the cost, the time. Initially, there were a lot of leakage problems using local stone. So even in Doshi's work, in MDC block, he started separating the stone wall from the inner plastered wall. So those are the things which sort of grew over the time, and as you started working on it, you discovered some of these subtle things. But we were trying to sort of it's very easy when you are doing something on your own as a new thing, but when you have to work next to masters, you always feel watched. I mean, not that even today you feel watched, but I mean, not for whatever you do. You always feel Doshi and Korea is sitting there and looking at you. But here it gets even more pronounced, and then you become a little aware of it. That becomes a problem many times.
Can I just ask, maybe I'll ask Medappa a little bit about, it would be very nice to know about when you You showed us MHU, the Married Housing Unit, as well as the hostel blocks, the P and Q, right? So in both of those, there is you can see both stone and concrete. So if you could talk a little bit about how you were, for example, in MHU, the wraparound that you did with the stone wall, a little bit about that, because you used it to show, to sort of almost like a street edge, trying to match, maybe the street edge just across, but at the same time, that same vertical curvilinear plane, you used it to, to create these courtyard spaces for the housing unit. So if you could talk about that a little bit, how that idea developed, one, and then two, for the hostel blocks. Again, there you did something with both the materials. So how did that come about?
So when we started this kind of, when you start cooking in your kitchen, you have some ingredients already given to you. So like that, in this campus, there were already these materials and the language which was already set. But the new programs gave us a chance to do something different from what is already there. So we didn't, though we developed something in the language and the design philosophy, followed the earlier work. The difference came from when we were responding to the new programs which were there. Like you were mentioning about that stone wall, as that one, it was almost like a fort wall kind of thing which wraps around. That was very consciously, we had developed many schemes for that. We had made it, straight wall with larger functions, which actually kind of came, all the materials and the colors and all that came from the last project MDC, which was there. So from there we took the cue and then took it forward. And when it came to the hostel, we were not touching the older hostel, so we could do a little different. So we took little bit. So there was a pressure from the management for pace of the project to be faster, and the use of stone meant that it would take time. So we had to minimize the stone and the use of concrete also.
I have a question for you, Kiran. This is regarding the book. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the beginnings of this campus? I mean, you write in the book about it, about the genesis of this idea that you, of course, IIM Ahmedabad was, getting done in 74, I think, was when everything was done there. This started in the late 70s, I think. Could you tell us a little bit about the genesis of this campus? Who were the people? What were the ambitions? It's a very unusual kind of thing to start. Why was Bangalore chosen? I mean, are there stories behind any of these things?
While I, a little bit I would share, but I would then keep it really bare minimum and urge everybody to pick up a copy of the book. No, I just wanted to definitely share here that earlier also I said, 40 years of the campus. Just to clarify, although the Institute has celebrated its Golden Jubilee last year, it was the Bannerghatta Road campus, which was designed by Doshi, Kanvinde, and later by Mindspace, was actually started 40 years ago. So before that, it was the institute started at Langford Road in the St. Joseph's College building. And in fact, in the first chapter of the book, we talk a little bit about that. What was very, very fascinating as far as the stories of the Langford Road campus are concerned is that, and that was something, I didn't even know about till we started on the book project. People telling us that, the institute started to acquire one building after another. Existing buildings were being taken on lease. And so there was a point at which the institute was operating from buildings located randomly, in that entire neighborhood. And so in fact, there were hostel blocks which were somewhere else, and the library was somewhere else. And so you had to actually step out, walk along the street and go pick up your books from the library and then come back to your classroom. And in fact, there was this, we interviewed a group of 4 students from the 76 batch. In fact, Usha and I, Usha, who is here from the IIMB History Project, so Usha and Kumar would, identify people who we could interview who were part of the campus development committee or who were, early batches of the institute of the PGP program. So there were these 4 people we interviewed from the 76 batch, the first batch, and they shared how the hostel blocks were on the other side of Lal Bagh Gardens, and they had to walk through Lal Bagh Gardens to get to the class. And, it made us think that how wonderful, so they didn't have a garden campus, but they sort of had a garden to walk through to get, so it was very interesting.
But I think those days in 76, whole Bangalore was a garden. You could walk across everything. I mean, I came in 83, that time itself, it was like a heaven. So walking across, just remove the traffic and then imagine the place.
So yeah, I'm not going to share any little bit more than that because we also want to talk to you all about making this connect. So if I may just, just 2 questions more. One about, and this is for both of you, and I think, Bejoy, you might also want to expand on the question, but if you could share with us, going forward, for some of the architects who are here, some of the architecture students who are here, if one has to have build a capability to have the kind of design vision that architects of good standing have, then how does one make this design vision an adaptable one? I mean, so that when somebody comes in, almost like a Lego set, how do you prepare a master plan which has a solid material vocabulary, you build into it, you build in that aesthetic vocabulary, but you also bring in both spatial and formal elements which work like a Lego set so that if somebody comes in, they are able to fit in, particularly in, institutional campuses.
Actually, I showed 2 examples. I think even Korea's JNC also I showed, and just as a brief thing. And I mean, both of us we worked on both the campuses for a very, very long time. Must have visited each of these buildings more than 100 times. So, so both have these strong axes, which you can anchor onto. Both have totally different expressions, but something very common is you have this 200-meter long pergola. There is this 200 meters of meandering corridors which keep opening in and out. So both of them provide that anchor. So once you have that as a strong binding element, whatever you add on to it, it sort of fits into it. And so those kind of what you say, those axes are so strong that whatever you do, whatever you add, it really doesn't matter. So that has this ability that makes it able to absorb things. And I think this is what probably is the important thing whenever we do anything new, whenever we are doing some of these basic ideas which we learned from both of them, they somehow try to stick around, and you sort of tend to take it forward. The dimension of that path might be different, scale might be different, the expression might be different. But when you see most of these engineering colleges and all, you will see one block of civil engineering block different, electrical block different. Right? So eventually you have these different buildings put together. But in the case of IIM, you'll see everything sort of, connected. So you really don't have to step out of the building when you are in the academic block. So that's something which we learned this is what we take forward while doing other campuses.
The common threads, if we take the humanistic approach and the spaces that allow nature to take over, which Mohe was mentioning about JNC campus. Even there, it is the same. So in those cases, what we do is to actually try to merge with whatever is already existing. So in a way, it is difficult because you are doing next to the masters, but at the same time, it's easy because we are following their philosophy all the time. So it becomes easy.
Yeah, I think, these are really, really almost similar to your architecture or campus design becomes very similar to, I think, urban design, right? Where we know that the axis and the cross axis are very important. And then what they also seem to do is this crossing of paths. And then while you might plant new buildings and projects along these axes, which would work as streets perhaps in an urban design situation. These crossing of paths can sometimes become your courtyard. Sometimes they are just the corridor, like here. I think you have pergola corridor intersecting with another cross corridor. And just moving on to, one was to understand the start of the project when you are yourself asked to set a design vision. The other is when you come in, and I think, without being repetitive, but when you come in to a project, you've been called in to do a project, what would your advice, recommendation be to young architects? What should they keep in mind? What is the attitude or mindset to have?
I don't know. Normally, I sort of define it as a measurable and immeasurable. The measurable things are what you see on the site. Spend a lot of time studying the site, understanding the terrain, existing features, and all. These are all measurables. The climate is measurable. The way the wind flow, the rain flow, So, and then the functionality is measurable. What kind of function you have to put in there. So you have to master those things. You cannot really give excuses for not knowing it. the second part is the immeasurable thing where you bring emotions into the space and make it immeasurable. And that's the difficult part where the senses, start taking over and you start, touching, smelling, feeling things and say that this is what I can connect with, and this, this is an inspiring space and this is a motivating space. So how do you, so when those kind of words start coming in, then it becomes an immeasurable space, and you have to work with both. So, so I think it's a combination of both. I mean, you can go on and on talking.
Medappa, would you want to add something?
It's about when you are adding something. I mean, all of us want to put a print of our own in everything. But here, when you are adding next to something is already built, you're talking about something already built or
Something already
built. So then it's about not become conflictive, instead of that to merge with whatever is already there.
Bejoy, do you want to, is there anything that you wanted to ask? I think lots we probably want to ask. Otherwise, we'll throw it open.
I have just one question for both of you. So you have the great privilege of working on, fairly wonderful large campus projects. For a young architect sort of starting up practice to do a house or, a smaller project, what are the lessons you think? I mean, of course, measurable, immeasurable, but in terms of, ambition and the lessons of these projects of this scale, how does one extrapolate from here for a small project that one may have and fighting those battles, and doing a small project? I mean, what kind of advice or suggestions would you have, or what are the things that you would suggest one would pursue in that kind of very tight, small?
Well, I mean, every space is like collection of memories, right? I mean, you try to sort of create a place for keeping those memories. And when I imagine walking through the IIM corridors or maybe even JNC corridors, closing my eyes, I can draw that entire circulation, remembering the people I met at different places, the different activities happen. So it's all about those connections. I think the meeting people, having those conversations, and that's how you build up those memories, and that's what you remember actually, not necessarily the building, but you remember those events, and then it becomes very easy to draw up the whole thing. So that's on a larger scale, but when it comes to the smaller scale, it's almost the same thing. I mean, when you remember your childhood study table, it's not just the corner, but you will remember at what time the light comes in, what kind of temperature it would be, how when the mother used to cook, how that smell would come. So it's kind of so much of three-dimensional feeling for that every corner. So as an architect, if you just create a place for that memory to be placed there, then it becomes that much simpler.
Yeah. You were talking about learning from the whatever is with next to the masters. I sit with another little master. For 30 years I have been sitting next to him. So there's a lot to learn here itself.
That's being modest, man.
Yeah, so this getting an opportunity to work in those kind of projects has taught us a lot in terms of handling materials, to handling scale, to including landscape inside and all that. And I mean, this has been a wonderful journey going through this.
Maybe we can, yeah. All right, great.
Since you've been adding for over 24 years to the campus, I was curious to know what's the difference in approach in 2000 to 2024. At some point, did your approach become sort of self-referential since you're adding to your own considerable body of work in IIM Bangalore? Or are you still trying to reinforce an original diagram?
Well, over the time you become more confident. Over the time you realize the mistakes that you have made. And sort of, I mean, if we look at what we did recently, the last project being the hostel, there is a definite shift in terms of the way detailing is done. When you touch a door frame, how do you feel it? How a student should feel when he's in that room. And we imagine almost looking out from literally every room. So you sort of learn over the time and you try to question yourself and try to see the thing. And at least we can clearly see the first building, the way we approached it at GIV, as against what we did about a year back. I personally feel there is a huge, huge difference. And if you go and visit, you'll see it.
Thank you so much, sir. Just maybe you alluded to it. How much of a role does nostalgia amongst former students, professors play in addressing some of these issues when it comes to change that is required to be brought about? I come from another venerable 33-year-old institution in this city, my alma mater, the National Law School, where main academic block is as we all say, is a piece of crappy PWD architecture, right? But there is now a nostalgia amongst the students to keep it that way because they like the place, right? How do you address that? I know it's probably not true of IIM, but certainly not true of IIM, but how do you deal with that in the context of change and repurposing and rebuilding?
I think I always said that, I said that it's about memories. And when we look back at when I remember my college days, I remember every corner and I knew where my close friends would meet, So you just gravitate towards that place, and each one of us have that favorite corner of ours. So many times it may not have anything to do with architecture. It just you happen to be there, get conversant with. Typically when we travel, when we go to airport, some of you find comfortable sitting in one particular corner. So and then you get used to it. So many times I wonder why that happens. So there is some idea of familiarity. Okay, sorry. So subconsciously, I think we keep getting comfortable with that, and that's what actually all these things do. After 50 years, when you look back at your school days or college days, you start liking it. So of course the architecture has a great role to play. So because, as I said, those are the settings for you, and those are the anchors for you. So as an architect, you would actually try to provide that backdrops for those activities to generate and memories to create. Have I answered? No.
Can I say something? Yeah. Your comment reminded me of this. There's this French architect, husband and wife team called Lacaton and Vassal. And sometimes architecture isn't the answer. So they were invited to this American university to do a big food court, like a student center, primarily food. And so they came to the campus and they had a big budget for this big building. They spent 2 weeks on campus, they went away, and then after a couple of months they came back and they said, we've got a design for you. And they presented them with a map
of the campus and all of those really popular places where the food trucks are. And they said, with $20,000, we can do lovely furniture in all of those places, and that's your food court. And so sometimes, because of our tradition as architects, as Beaux-Arts education impels on us, that our first reaction is architecture will fix it. And sometimes, these things about memories and connections and the mediated references over time, those are forgotten in our urgency to rebuild or recreate things. So sometimes one has to look a little further than architecture.
I think most of the time nature takes care of 90% of the things. Right? But Kiran showed the pictures of IIM. IIM is already a beautiful building, but the way the tree cover has come in, it sort of complements it so well and becomes an integral part of it. So if you create a place for the nature to grow and it does most of the things for you.
It covers up all the mistakes as well.
That's why I showed that sports complex.
Well, continuing with that, you said, Mr. Mohe, you said that greenery is the soul of the campus. I just was wondering, what were some of the challenges of working on the campus? Do you have memories of, since we're also talking about memories of gardeners, horticulturists, the challenges as well. I ask this with remembering a naturalist of our city who was a student of Doshi and one of the first batches of Sept, Vijay Thiruvadi, who day after tomorrow is the first anniversary of his passing, and he was a great admirer of the campus as well.
No, I didn't get the question.
The question is about the challenges of working with nature. What was there, and any gardeners and horticulturists who you came across and would like to remember?
Yeah. We all, more than I remember the one in JNC. These guys, these people are extremely important, and especially in JNC, there's this gardener who is very close to CNR Rao. So first, if we have to get something done, we have to patav him, So to tell him, please do this and do that. So, but what is nice about IIM is it's not a manicured thing, and few of these, you see few elements here and there. But on a larger scale, it's so natural. It's just allowed to grow. So that makes it so much better. The ivy, growing on the walls. And when about 5 years back, when Mr. Doshi was there and we were going around with him in the campus. And he said, I have seen something with that ivy and some of those, the fruits which have come. And he was very particular that he wanted to see that wall only. And they had kept this electric car for him and all. He refused to get into it, and he was walking around. And everyone was so, protective of it. But he just wanted to see that particular wall which has grown with ivy. Finally, we found it, and he was so happy about it. But the thing is, even for him, the way nature taking over his building was so important, and he was so happy to see it because he says, I have seen it, I want to see it again now. So I think, though it's a challenge, it's a pleasant challenge, because nature knows how to complement your work. The way the branches grow, and it really sort of takes care of most of my mistakes as well as.
There is a book that has just been released, I think, by the Institute again, which is on the gardens in the Institute and the people behind those gardens, from, of course, the first director, but also the various horticulturists and gardeners, some of them who've been there for 40 years and know each of those. Because it was a barren site, so there was probably a few, maybe one, I don't know how many trees, but a few trees. But everything has been, in a way, planted, but has no trace of that planting, in a way. It's this wild forests, and so Yeah, so there's a book out. I don't know, the institute is putting out a book on the gardens. That's what Kiran told me.
So I'm going to look around in the audience for anyone who wants to ask a question from the IIMB community.
Not.
Or a comment on what has just been said.
Okay, I have one. So Kiran, this is about the book, but it's also a question for the architects, for the architect community and for all of you. So I have lived on the campus for 14 plus, yeah. So sort of 18 plus 4, 22 years, and been associated with it for about 28 years. So I was, while reading your book, I kind of noticed that you do talk about spaces being used by people and they become places. But, right, you've sort of talked about that. But when I look at all the pictures in the book, a lot of it is about the design and the structures. And I don't see as many people dotting those spaces compared to, the sort of the pergolas and the light and the shade and the trees and so on. And I was wondering why. But now that I saw these other presentations, right, I noticed again that a lot of it is about the structure, the architecture. So the question is this general question to the architecture community. Is there, I mean, though you talk about memories and people and so on, but is the sort of, is your pedagogy more about the structure than people?
I would definitely, I definitely want to be the first one to try and answer that. As far as the book is concerned, yes, it does have very few pictures of with people in them. And that was also because many of the photographs were taken. So what I noticed was that today, if you walk down the pergola corridor, or if you walk through the two large courtyards, the one which connects the library and the L cluster, or the other one where the Prabhakar courtyard is, or even the N classroom block at the back side, you do see a lot more students at any time of the day. But when I started shooting, and I am just assuming that the intake in the programs has probably gone up, or students are hanging out more, or I'm not too sure, but when the majority of the photographs were taken, that was about, 3 to 4 years ago, I had started shooting already. The campus during the day was deserted, and in fact, it surprised me and it bothered me so much that in 2018, I think I decided to do a SEPT summer school on campus. It was an 8-day very intensive workshop, and it was called Rethinking Campus Design, Mapping Social Interaction. And I think I was really interested in finding out that in spite of having this beautiful campus and courtyards and wide corridors and such beautiful corridors, why was it that students were not seen there? And through the workshop, we used something called transect mapping, which is used more in environmental studies, but also is being used in urban design now. So we had the students use this transect mapping, and they actually mapped the paths of members of the community, faculty, students, staff, and we found that the large body of students was not really, and they did not really need to enter the pergola corridor as much. And the most common path was, so they were taking the shortest route from the most commonly used classrooms to their hostel blocks. And that didn't seem to cross the pergola corridor or the spaces outside the library, which are the most beautiful spaces architecturally. So if you had to capture the architecturally beautiful spaces, you had to miss out on the people. But that's just me making an excuse. But no, there is definitely, I would say, we are now, I think, as a community trying to make both architecture as well as urban design more people-centric. So definitely, and I think the reason why the approach to the book was to interview a lot of people was to bring this to the attention of architects that we are missing out on this.
It's great that the director's here and that you've posed this question. So I'm going to flip this a bit on its head. So we conducted 2 workshops at IIM, and these were 1-week workshops. We got to stay on campus, and we appropriated the campus. So beware, we're coming. The architects are coming. But the thing that I want to suggest is that it is an incredible campus. I mean, by any yardstick. But you're right, there are no people. And so I would suggest that maybe those of you who are on the board or faculty members, etc., may have to reimagine or curate ways in which to use that building. And so maybe that's something to think about. That if I was given a chance, I could think of many ways to use that building. So yes.
So you see a lot of such
Yeah.
people.
No, it is, I mean, not to make a joke of it, but I think there is a little bit of for instance, the BIC, for whatever, it's really because of the stakeholders. It's because of the people who curate it that it is always active and it has people and it is full of life. And so sometimes maybe that is something to think about, that what can you do with this amazing campus in terms of bringing people in? You do have events once in a while on campus where people come in to engage with the campus, but it is in a way isolated from its context. And so is there a way for the institute to become public at some points of the year, where there is an engagement and there is a way that you curate events that can bring people in there?
It's a managing school. It's not
Yeah, I think we'll, this might have to be, probably we'll invite you, Bejoy, to campus and then you can, I think one more question.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Maybe just as a follow-up question to that. Yes, as a design fraternity, we do look up to IIM campus as being a place which is people-centric, which has evolved over time in the way people have responded and owned up the place. But as a campus, being a teaching and learning environment, we have reached a point where learning and teaching environments have gone beyond the bounds of a physical space with the help of technology. From that point of view, with a campus being that old, how easy or difficult is for the campus to be receptive to new technology, getting integrated as an layer and not just as an addition? And what role does a designer have in foreseeing the future adaptability of a campus? Thank you.
Can I know that this question is, so can I invite at this point Professor Hrishikesh Krishnan to say a little bit something about what has just been said?
No, I think it is a challenge to integrate technology, particularly new learning technologies. I think in the en bloc classrooms, it's done a reasonably good job, though clearly when we now look forward to what we'll have to do in the future, we might need to look at things a bit differently. We got first-hand experience of that during COVID, when many of the classrooms, in fact, had to be used more like studios than like classrooms. So we had to make a lot of technological changes in there. But I certainly think it's an important point that was made just now, because when we are looking to the educational spaces for the future, it's undoubtedly true that we will have to perhaps look at the integration of technology in a more deliberate kind of way. If I can just add a couple of points, just which I think are important from the theme of today's discussion. One thing I must say, though, is that nature doesn't just grow on its own. So, you have to do a lot of work on campus. We are blessed that we live in a city where things grow fairly easily once you have got them on their way. But there's a lot of work which goes into that. And I must here mention a couple of things. One thing I must mention is that we did a lot of reforestation on campus. For example, at some point about 15 years ago, we found there were a lot of invasive species. There were things like subabul, which were preventing other things from growing. We had to do even that buffer zone which you were talking about. We had to replant a lot of stuff. At that time, we were wondering whether we were doing the right thing, but in retrospect, it turned out really well because it created that thick forest that you're seeing today. And even in the early stages, I was told that a lot of changes had to be made even to what Mr. Doshi had in mind. To get the tree canopy, for example, a lot of things were replanted. And one of our directors in between, Professor K.R.S. Murthy, who was there in the early 90s. In fact, if you're looking at the greening of the campus today, a lot of that credit actually goes to Professor Murthy, because it was during his tenure that the greening really happened. The first time I entered IIMB campus was 1990. And at that time, it was hardly green, but by the time Professor Murthy completed his tenure 6 years later, in 97, the path to greenery had really started. So I think people do play a very significant role in making that happen.
We had seen one of those pictures taken from the top where there's literally no tree across. And you see this amazing change over the years.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, I think we'll probably stop with this. Maybe Sandhya will come in and...
Sure. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all the panelists on stage, Kiran, who brought us her lovely book, which is available for sale outside if any of you wants to buy a copy. I want to thank Bejoy, like I said already, our favorite on the panel for reasons previously mentioned. And I also want to thank Mr. Mohe and Mr. Medappa for being here. So a round of applause for the panelists, please. And on behalf of BIC, I want to extend a personal thank you to all the students who are here. Thank you so much for bearing the rain and coming over to BIC. Hope to see some of you, most of you back here again soon. Thank you all. Please drive home safe. Good night.